No Treasure, Chapter 30. Peter was dry and warm in Uncle Victor's cabin. The coast of Norway was somewhere out in the blackness. The Atlantic rolled and the Clang Pearson pitched, and Peter was jounced up and down with the wash of the waves. Ahead lay America. So Peter was going to America. He was going to see New York and go to Pittsburgh with Jan Lessig and then travel to Minnesota, where his uncle was a professor in St. Olaf's College in Northfield. Uncle Victor could arrange it, he said. You can be admitted as a minor in my custody. Our minister in Washington will do that much for us. He'll be only too glad to do something in return for all this gold. But what about Jan Lessig? Peter asked. How can he go without a passport? Because he has a passport, the one that was stolen. There'll be a record of it in Washington, and they'll be grateful for the information about the one who is masquerading in his name. They won't be long finding him. Peter was overjoyed with this good news for Jan. Since he had risked his life for him, there was no reward too high. Uncle Victor said something like this. It wasn't as easy for Jan as it looks, Peter. He ran a grave risk. He did it simply because I didn't feel right about sailing and leaving you there. Of course, he knew the routine of the camp. He knew that at supper hour the barracks would be deserted, except for the mess hall. And he knew about the side door in the sentry. But he was still in danger of being caught himself. If one little thing had gone wrong, he would have been caught. He had his uniform too, Peter mused. One German uniform looks pretty much like another. Then a thought struck him. But how did he get the key to open the cell door? He wanted to know. The keys are kept on a panel in the guard room. The room was empty while the guard was at mess. All Jan had to do was slip in and take the key marked Das Gefängnis. His uncle went on. All of that part was easy. The only hard part was getting him to the barracks without his being seen on the way there. For he was being looked for everywhere, so we didn't dare have him go by foot from the Snake to the beach in the barracks. It was Rolls who solved it for us, his uncle went on. He suggested that, since the roads were being watched, we make a landing by water. The Clang was pretty well covered by camouflage, so she could be moved to the mouth of the Snake, where it meets the big fjord. We were lucky it was a bad night. The rain and mist shortens the day. When it got dark, Rolls and Hans Torp and Sten lowered the lifeboat and rolled him right up to the fishing pier. But they couldn't wait for him because it was too dangerous. They had to get back to the cover of the Clang. That's why you had to swim so far. But how did Jan get past the sentries in the barracks? Just the way you got out. He waited for one to come up, turned, and start back. The minute his back was turned, he stepped inside the door. It isn't bolted till taps, and Jan knew that. The sentry was there to guard that very door, but there are ways to get past sentries if you can think of those ways. Wasn't Jan afraid he'd be caught when he got inside the barracks? Of course, terribly, but he had to risk it. He did it for me? For you, and because I said I'd take him to America if he got you out. We heard the soldiers marching in the hallway. Were they coming to get me? Whether they were or not, you and Jan would have been in a pretty tight place if you'd run into them. Peter fell back into the bunk. So I'm to go to America, but what about Mother and Lavisa and Bunny? Peter, I know you think it high-handed of me to be taking you this long distance without so much as asking if you wanted to go. But there was nothing else to do with you. I couldn't go all the way across the Atlantic Ocean without knowing what would become of you. And when I got you on board, there was nothing to do with you but to take you along. We daren't turn back with all this gold. Oh, Uncle Victor, it isn't that. Only what? Well, when Father left, he said I was the man of the family and was to look after the others. Peter, don't worry about your mother's not being able to look out for herself and for her children. And although I'm sorry to have to tell you this, your father may soon be home. The British have withdrawn their forces from much of the coast. Our army is putting up a magnificent defense, but it's only a question of time until it can no longer hold out. Then the order will come to cease firing. Peter thought about the night his father had gone away, the night of the first blackout, and of all the things that had happened since. It's a shame, Peter, for you to be leaving without so much as saying goodbye to your family, and Helga and Michael and Per Garson and the others. But your mother was glad when I told her what we were going to try to do. You know, she had gone to the Holmes to warn them that the missing Nazi might be in their barn. When Louisa got to the farm with the news of what happened to you, she strapped on her skis and took the back trail through the woods to the snake. "Take him to America by all means," she said. "I want him to grow up in a country where people are free." She asked to have you promise that you will always remember you come of liberty-loving people who think freedom is a greater heritage than gold. There was a clatter of steps in the companionway. Rolls came into the cabin. "Submarine off starboard," he said. Uncle Victor jumped to his feet in alarm. Then he saw the sheepish grin on Rolls's face. "But it's a British sub," he spoke lamely. "The Klang's doing 5 knots in this sea," he added. "She ought to ride well," Uncle Victor answered. "She's got cargo of gold for ballast." The flag of Norway was draped above the map on the bulkhead. Into the cabin came the notes of a cornet. "It's my old horn. I lent it to the Polish boy," Rolls explained. In the galley, Jan Lessig was practicing the Star-Spangled Banner. The end.